Hello, everyone, and I've got a question like four times this week, and I see it all over the Facebook groups, the shrimp groups, and all that. And that question is, do shrimp tanks need a heater? Now, the quick answer is no. 99% of the time, no. So, let me explain. So, first of all, this video is going to be mainly about, we're talking about cherry shrimp or Neocaridina. So, let's start there. Neocaridina are temperate creatures, not tropical. What exactly does that mean? Well, think kind of like a goldfish. You see people keeping goldfish outside in their ponds and all outside in the winter, and basically, if a goldfish does not freeze, it can live. Now, cherry shrimp, Neocaridina shrimp are not as tough as goldfish, I'll say that now, so don't think that. But I've kept goldfish outside all winter long here in Indiana where it gets downright frigid, and that used to be my thing, keeping goldfish outside, and they lived year after year after year after year outside all winter long, no problem at all. And then a couple years ago, I had some shrimp outside, and the pond that used to be my goldfish pond years ago, I put some shrimp in there, and I could not catch all of them out. Sure enough, the next spring, when I get it all going again, there's still shrimp in there. They survived all Indiana winter long. So, what does that tell you? Now, I did keep a greenhouse cover over the pond, and that was solely to keep the water from freezing solid, like I said. Nothing's going to live if it freezes solid. Well, there might be a few things out there, but as far as the fish and shrimp we keep in our tanks, not really. So then you may ask, what is the ideal temperature? Well, with Neos, they can take a huge range. Now, the breeding temp, they will start breeding around 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And I feel comfortably anywhere from 68, they will start breeding reliably. You'll get some breeding in the 66, 67. Once you get warmer than 68 degrees Fahrenheit, they will breed reliably over and over again. Now, when you're talking ideal temps, I think 68 to 80 is what I call ideal temps for Neos now. They can take way hotter. I've seen them I try to keep mine outside when I keep them outside in the summer. I try to keep them under 90. So there's that, but I think ideally 68 to 80 is ideal. When you start getting warmer, you start getting into more issues. Sure, they'll breed faster and they'll grow faster, and you'll make a whole lot faster the warmer you go. But you'll start running into problems with bacterial infections, bacteria. If something bad happens when it's warm, it's going to happen a lot faster, just like when something's going good and they're breeding good, they'll breed faster. But if something goes bad, it's going to go down the tubes real quick. So back to this point, that shrimp can take the cold. For me, I ship shrimp all over the United States for a living. However, in the wintertime, I do not ship plecos or guppies. Those are the main fish I sell, and I don't sell those in the wintertime because it's just not worth the risk. Now, most guppies and plecos and most of your so-called tropical fish, most of them, you really don't even need a heater most of the time for those, as long as you keep your house reasonable. But they start being really unhappy when they start getting below 55, I found out over the years. And they'll start dying when they get under 50. Unfortunately, I know that because having a pond outside, there's no way you can catch every single one. And usually you start seeing them struggle when you start getting in the low 50s. Then when they start getting below 50, the last ones you possibly cannot catch, you'll start seeing them float with the guppies. So that goes to show you, as long as shrimp do not freeze, they'll live now. So while the guppies that happen to be outside, they start kicking the bucket when they get under 50 degrees. The shrimp made it all winter long. And the lowest recorded temperature is like 32.7. And freezing is 32.0. So they was right there at that. Right there at the freezing point. For months on end. They were in the 30s most of the winter. And didn't die. So there you have it. That shrimp are tough when it comes to the cold, simply because they're temperate. They're not tropical creatures. So now I want to talk about why you probably shouldn't use a heater in your shrimp tank. The thing is, heaters suck. They just don't last long. And that is partly because the cost into making a reliable, actually good heater that's not going to easily fail is going to make it so expensive that no one's going to want to buy it. Everything comes with a cost point, purchase point that people will pay. People are not willing to pay hundreds of dollars for a heater. It's going to be reliable. Now, there's some, they do exist, but they're very, very expensive, and they're not used for the masses. It's usually super high-end saltwater reef tanks and stuff like that, where you get these outrageously expensive titanium heaters. But realistically, no one's going to get a super expensive heater to put in their 10-gallon shrimp tank. It just doesn't make sense. So you get cheapos that they always fail. Every single heater will fail at some point. And there's, of all the tanks I've had and all the heaters I've had throughout the years, I'd say it's about a 50-50 split. 50% that when they fail, the thermostat will stick, and that means the heater will run 24/7 until you cook your tank. Now, or it just quits working. I remember not too long ago staying on top of what's going on in the aquarium world. Aquarium Co-op come out with their own heater, and I remember thinking, ooh, but their stand on quality and all that, I probably figured this probably won't last long, and sure enough, it didn't. So heaters just suck because they can't. The cheap ones are not going to be good, and no one wants to buy a super expensive one. Now, at the beginning days when I was trying to get everything going and not really knowing what I was doing fully, I tried some of the really cheap heaters. You know, the really cheap ones. And let's just say those either cooked the tank, those were like 80% cooked the tank, and I even got the hell shocked out of me. So, whatever you do, just avoid heaters if you can. If you're talking shrimp tanks, you don't need them at all. Unless you're talking like Salusi shrimp or saltwater shrimp. Talking about your basic cherry neo shrimp. Not needed. They're expensive. They use up tons of electricity. They make your electric bill go up. This simply is not worth the risk and the cost, especially since you don't even need them at all. Most people keep their houses like high 60s, which is perfect for shrimp. Now, even if you're one of these people that love the cold, live somewhere cold, and you keep your house insane in the 50s, your shrimp ain't gonna die. Your neos are gonna be just fine. They're fine, I promise. Some of you may be thinking, why are you talking all this mess on heaters? I see heaters in your tanks. Well, that comes to about the only time I think anyone really needs a heater, and that's if you're selling shrimp for money, like me. I sell shrimp for a living, and in my house, the back of the house where most of my tanks are, it gets cold. It was an addition to the house long before I moved here, and so it doesn't get good heat and AC flow. It's all gas, air, forced air furnace, and there's not a whole lot of flow back here. So when we get below 0 Fahrenheit, like brutally cold, some of my tanks on the floor without heaters can get in the upper 40s, the mid 50s, and throughout most of the winter, without a heater, the tanks on my floor, I have tanks on the floor, because I got tanks from floor to ceiling. The tanks on the floor are normally without heaters like upper 50s for most of the winter. And remember, I said they start breeding at 66, 67 and will reliably breed at 68. So I breed shrimp for a living. So that's why I have heaters. And you'll notice that if I have a heater in a tank, it is always, always, always using a heat controller. That way, if the heater sticks, but remember I said 50% of them stick and run 24/7 till they cook the tank, or they just quit working. With a heat controller, you look at the temperature, and if it's not keeping up, that means your heater's failed. The heat controller keeps it from sticking and cooking your tank, which is the absolute worst. So in my opinion, for your Neo tanks, don't even waste your time. Don't even waste your efforts with a heater. It's not needed. It's not worth the risk. Heck, most of the fish you're gonna keep in your aquariums, they don't need a heater either. I went most of my life without ever having a heater in any of my tanks. Now I know a lot of people, when they buy a new tank, they buy the tank, they buy a light, they buy the filter, they buy a heater as just standard, something you gotta have. But unless you're keeping really warm water fish, or you keep your house like in the 50s, you keep your house in the upper 60s to 70, you don't need a heater for most fish. So think twice before investing in a heater or getting a wild idea that you need a heater, because especially for shrimp, it just ain't needed. Unless your tanks are in a cold place in the winter and you sell shrimp for a living and you need them to keep breeding, don't waste your money or efforts or your thoughts on even worrying about a heater. All right, hope that helps someone out there. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.